The scream of a rhino calf cut through the morning like a crack of lightning. It echoed over the tall grass and rolled across the river, sharp and heartbreaking. Birds exploded into the air. Hooves scraped against sliding mud. A mother rhino spun toward the sound, her breath fast and hot, her eyes wide with terror. Somewhere ahead, hidden by drifting mist, her baby cried out again high, panicked and fading. For one terrible moment, savannah sounded like it was tearing in half. And then the world rewound. Just minutes earlier, the African savannah had been at peace. Dawn stretched itself across the land like a warm blanket, painting everything in gold. Long grasses bent gently in the soft wind, brushing against one another with a whispering sound. Dust floated through the air in slow, lazy spirals, glowing in the early sunlight. The river moved quietly, no rush, no roar, just a steady, warm flow that looked safe enough for anyone to step into. Along its bank walked a mother rhino and her tiny calf. He was still at that wobbly age where every sound felt new and every shadow invited his curiosity. His ears were round and too big for his head, twitching in every direction. Each step he took seemed filled with excitement, as if the world had been made only for him to explore. He chased butterflies that danced over the water, stumbled after frogs that skipped away from his heavy feet, and splashed in the shallow edge of the river with joyful grunts. His mother watched him with the calm patience of a creature who had already known too many dangers. She kept close, never more than a few steps behind him. Her ears lifted and lowered as she listened to the river's unusual hum. She could smell something different in the air, a hint of moisture that didn't belong to a normal dry season morning. The river had been climbing higher each day, and now its edge reached farther inland, soaking the ground beneath her feet. But her calf didn't notice. To him, the day was perfect. Not far from the rhinos stood a massive baobab tree. Thick and ancient, its trunk rising like a pillar toward the sky. Under its wide shadow grazed an elephant herd. Their slow movements and deep rumbling breaths blended into the peaceful rhythm of the morning. At the center of the herd stood Nandiri, the elephant's matriarch. Her tusks curved long and smooth, her skin was marked with soft cracks from many seasons, and her eyes carried the kind of wisdom that only years of guiding a family could give. She watched the river too. She felt the air pressing heavier than usual, thick with moisture and the faint electric taste that often came before storms. Every so often, she lifted her trunk and tested the wind, like she was reading an invisible message. The younger elephants trusted her completely. They grazed slowly, keeping one eye on her and one on the world around them, sensing the quiet tension that Nandiri felt, but didn't show. For a while, everything stayed like this, soft, warm, peaceful. The calf trotted ahead with the clumsy confidence of youth. The mother rhino followed. The elephants grazed. The river flowed. But nature was changing. The sun rose higher, warming the earth more quickly than usual. The river whispered louder, rubbing against its banks with a low, restless sound. Mud along the edge shifted under the weight of the rhino calf's playful steps. Each time he splashed, the ground sucked at his small feet, trying to pull him in just a little. He didn't notice. He only giggled if a rhino could giggle with each new feeling the wet soil gave him. His mother stepped closer, nudging him gently with her nose. The nudge wasn't a warning, just a reminder. Stay near me. Stay safe. But the calf only bumped her back with a playful squeak and continued splashing, sending tiny waves toward the reeds far overhead. A quiet rumble rolled through the sky. It wasn't loud enough to frighten anyone, yet it felt out of place. The clouds were still thin and pale, but something behind them was gathering strength. Nandiri paused in her grazing, her ears lifting wide. She rumbled a signal to the herd, low and soft, telling them to stay alert. The mother rhino heard it too. She looked at her calf again. He nosed the water, surprised by his own reflection, then snorted happily at the ripples. He was too young to understand danger, too innocent to sense the shift in the world around him. To him, the day was just another adventure. To his mother, it was beginning to feel like a warning. Near the tree, a flock of guinea fowl suddenly burst into flight, wings beating the air in frantic panic. Their calls cut across the river like sharp needles. Nandiri watched them rise, her eyes narrowing. Animals didn't rush for no reason. The mother rhino stepped closer to her calf. But before she could guide him back to firmer ground, the soil beneath them made a soft, wet sound, like something letting go. The calf took another step, sank deeper than before, and stumbled. He squeaked in surprise, waving his short legs to find balance. His mother pushed forward quickly, but the mud sucked at her feet too. The river slid closer. The bank tilted. Water seeped up from cracks in the soil. Still, nothing had broken yet. The world was holding its breath. The calf managed to climb backward a little and shook off the mud, pretending it had only been a game. But the ground beneath him was no longer stable. Each step he took made the earth tremble softly. Even the reeds along the waterline seemed to lean away as if they knew what was coming. The wind shifted. A cool gust brushed across the savannah, lifting dust into the air and bending the tall grasses. Nandiri raised her trunk again, and this time she gave a deeper rumble, a warning, one the entire herd felt in their bones. The elephants tightened their circle. Young ones pushed toward the center. The mother rhino's heartbeat quickened. She stepped in front of her calf now, forming a barrier between him and the river. But the calf, full of fresh confidence from his earlier play, tried to squeeze past her, wanting to return to the splashing water. She blocked him again. Firmer this time, another rumble rolled through the sky. Louder, closer, birds took off from the trees in a sudden wave, their wings carving sharp lines through the air. A few monkeys screamed from high branches and fled deeper into the forest. Even the insects grew silent, as if something had told them to hide. The mother rhino lowered her head. The calf pressed against her leg. Finally sensing the shift in her body, a single clod of mud slid into the river with a soft plop, then another, then another. The bank was sinking. The world grew quiet, too quiet, as if the land itself was holding still. It's preparing for the moment when peace would break. And somewhere deep inside that silence, the river waited. The storm had not arrived yet. The danger had not revealed itself. But every creature felt it coming. Sure as the rising sun, the calm was ending and the story was about to begin. The earth screamed, before the river even moved. A sudden crack split the bank, sharp and terrifying, and the ground beneath the baby rhino gave way. One moment he was splashing in the shallows, curious and playful, and the next he was tumbling downward, sliding into the churning water with a helpless squeal. Mud, water, and debris sprayed in all directions. His tiny legs thrashed frantically, searching for purchase that did not exist. The river, once a gentle ribbon of gold in the morning sun, had transformed into a raging, frothing monster that pulled him away as if the current itself wanted to swallow him whole. His mother's roar shattered the air. It was raw, instinctive, full of terror, the kind of sound that echoed off every tree and rolled across the savannah like a warning. She lunged forward, hooves slamming against the soft mud of the riverbank, but the water pushed back harder than she could match. Each step was met with resistance, the unstable ground threatening to collapse under her massive weight. She swung her head, trying to reach her calf, but the river seemed to stretch farther with every heartbeat. She bellowed again, a sound filled with desperation and fury, as if trying to bargain with the river itself. The baby's squeals grew fainter as he was carried downstream, every second stretching like an eternity. Far above the chaos, the birds scattered. A flock of starlings erupted into the sky, wings flashing black against the shimmering light. Monkeys shrieked from the trees, bounding higher into the canopy. Even the insects paused, hovering mid-flight, as if the world itself had frozen for a moment. The savannah was no longer a calm, golden place. It had become a theater of panic, and at the center of it all stood the mother rhino, frozen between fury and helplessness, her calf slipping farther away with every passing heartbeat. But the herd under the baobab tree had not gone unnoticed. Nandiri, the wise elephant matriarch, raised her massive head. Her ears flared wide, catching every sound, the bellow of the mother rhino, and the rush of the river, the small panicked cries that would otherwise be drowned out. Her eyes, dark and knowing, widened just enough to signal alarm. The younger elephants shifted, nudging one another, sensing the tension that radiated from her. In a deep, low rumble, Nandiri gave the signal to move, and the herd responded with an instinctive urgency that only decades of survival could teach. They began marching, steady and deliberate, forming a protective cluster around their leader as they headed toward the river's edge. Time slowed as Nandiri approached the rushing water. Every step was measured, deliberate, yet urgent. She tested the ground with her trunk, feeling the shifting mud beneath her feet. The current's roar grew louder, and the calf's desperate squeals sliced through the chaos. The water tugged at him mercilessly, spinning him around like a toy. Nandiri raised her trunk and trumpeted, a call that was both warning and reassurance. Her herd flanked her, forming living walls of muscle and power against the riverbank, creating a barrier of safety and strength. Even the youngest elephants leaned in, trunks touching the earth to brace against the unstable soil. Every creature understood without instruction that a life depended on their courage. The mother rhino lunged again, desperate, but she could not reach him. Her legs slipped in the mud. The river surged, slamming her back. Her bellows broke into frantic roars, raw with panic and grief. Her eyes searched the frothing water, catching glimpses of the spinning, helpless calf, each sighting tearing at her heart. She pressed against the riverbank, trying to hold her ground. But it was as if the world had grown suddenly enormous and cruel. The river's current was relentless, and the riverbank continued to crumble in quiet. Unstoppable slides. Nandiri stepped forward, her massive feet sinking slightly with each step, yet she did not falter. Her eyes locked on the calf, scanning for the moment to strike, the precise instant when intervention could save a life. The water licked at her legs, threatening to unbalance her, but her confidence never wavered. She raised her trunk high, and with a forceful push against the rushing current, she waded deeper, feeling the pull of the water as though testing its strength. The river roared around her, splashing against her tusks and ears. But Nandiri moved like a living fortress. Resolute and unyielding, the calf floundered beneath the surface for a heartbeat, spinning helplessly. His tiny limbs scraped against the water, thrashing in panic. For a moment, it seemed as though he might vanish completely, swallowed by the angry river. His mother screamed, her call breaking over the savannah, mingling with the trumpets of the elephants and the rustling of the fleeing wildlife. Each sound, each motion, each heartbeat collided in the air, creating a chaos so complete it left the ground itself trembling. The mudslides, the crashing branches, the angry water, they all seemed determined to prove that nature was both magnificent and merciless. Nandiri reached the point of no return. The calf was almost entirely submerged, and only the tip of his back broke the water's surface. Her massive trunk shot forward, wrapping around him with precise force, lifting him just enough to keep his small head above the water. The current fought back, but Nandiri's strength was greater. Her eyes locked on his tiny, terrified face, and she gave a deep, steady rumble that seemed to reassure him, telling him silently that he was not alone. Behind her, the herd pressed closer, ensuring that no other shift of mud or current could break the fragile safety she had created. For a long moment, the calf was lost in the torrent, spinning, scared, exhausted. Then, as if sensing the fortress of elephants surrounding him, he stiffened, instinctively pressing into the grip of Nandiri's trunk. His panic began to soften into trust. The mother, Rhino, seeing this, hesitated for a heartbeat, disbelief and relief washing over her. The river still raged, but the impossible had begun. Life had found a way to hold on to life, and yet, even in this moment of glimmering hope, the world had not fully forgiven them. The river continued to gnaw at the banks, threatening collapse, and the mother rhino's body shook with adrenaline and fear. Nandiri stood firm, unyielding, a living shield against disaster. Around them, the savannah held its breath. Birds circled above, cautiously, and the distant clouds rumbled once more, a reminder that this calm was temporary. Every heartbeat, every splash, every trumpet spoke of the fragile line between life and loss. And so the chapter closed on chaos water, still thrashing. Voices still raw and hearts still pounding, but the first spark of hope had arrived. The baby rhino, though battered and scared, remained alive. The elephants, with Nandiri at their center, had answered nature's challenge. And somewhere deep within the forest and river, a quiet understanding settled that even in the wildest storm, courage and instinct could turn desperation into possibility. Here's a fully developed 1,000-word Chapter 3. Continuing seamlessly from Chapter 2 in cinematic wildlife hero style with sensory detail, emotional pacing. In simple 8th grade vocabulary, the river had swallowed the baby rhino whole. For a heartbeat, the world seemed frozen in endless panic, the river's roar. The mother's desperate cries and the trumpeting of the elephants collided in a symphony of chaos. Then, as if answering an unspoken plea, a small, trembling shape surfaced. The calf's tiny legs spun helplessly, his head dipping under and surfacing again, the water tugging him in every direction. Weak, exhausted, and terrified, he was drifting, but the river had carried him straight toward the elephants. In that instant, hope flickered a fragile flame in the midst of chaos. Nandiri moved without hesitation. Her massive feet sank slightly into the soft mud, grounding her like a living anchor. She positioned herself just downstream, her wide frame ready to catch the small creature the river had so cruelly tossed into danger. Behind her, the younger elephants did something remarkable. Trunks entwined, forming a living chain, a line of strength stretching toward the water. It was a movement born of instinct, memory, and trust. A silent understanding that they were part of something greater than themselves. Each elephant pressed against the bank, their bodies forming walls to channel the water and protect the calf from being swept away again. The calf's small body slammed into Nandiri's side. The impact was soft, but enough to stop him from spinning further. Her trunk wrapped gently around him, cradling him like a mother would her own. The weight of the water pressed against them both, yet she stood firm, a living shield against the torrent. The calf squealed once, tiny and raw, then began to relax slightly, trusting the enormous creature holding him. Around them, the river thrashed and foamed. But the elephant's unity created a bubble of calm, a place where survival could still bloom. The mother rhino arrived on the scene, her legs trembling, her breath hot and ragged. Every instinct told her to expect the worst. She skidded to a stop at the river's edge, eyes wide and scanning, searching. Then she saw it. Her baby, alive, cradled against the side of a creature she had only moments ago regarded as a giant stranger. Relief washed over her in a flood, mingling with disbelief and gratitude. She lowered her head, touching her calf gently, a moment so delicate it almost seemed fragile against the raging river. Her trunk nudged his small body, and the calf responded with a shivering squeak, nuzzling into her legs. For a heartbeat, the world felt tender again. Nandiri released the calf just enough to guide him toward the riverbank, the younger elephants maintaining their protective wall. The water still surged, but the danger had lessened. Each step the calf took toward safety was supported by the invisible strength of the herd, a combination of instinct, courage, and compassion. The mother rhino followed, stepping carefully in the mud, now aware that her child's survival was no longer a gamble. She paused occasionally, checking for threats, but the elephant's presence gave her the courage to move forward. Step by careful step, they reached firmer ground. Once on solid earth, the calf collapsed against the mother's side, exhausted and shivering. Nandiri and the younger elephant stayed nearby, trunks lowered and ears alert, ready to intervene if the river or the unstable bank decided to strike again. The savannah was quiet now, except for the soft gurgle of water and the distant calls of birds returning to the trees. It was a fragile calm, one earned through courage and cooperation. Everyone present seemed to understand the gravity of the moment. Life had been preserved, not through luck, but through deliberate, instinctive action. The mother rhino lifted her head, eyes scanning the elephants one by one. There was no fear in her gaze now, only recognition. Gratitude passed silently between species, a language older than words. The calf, still pressed to her side, took in the enormous, gentle faces surrounding him. He had been spared by creatures who moments ago were strangers. Now they were protectors. Nature, in its often harsh and unforgiving way, had also revealed its capacity for care. The savannah seemed to breathe a little easier for it. Nandari lowered her trunk in a slow, deliberate motion, a signal that the danger had passed. Her herd began to step back from the water, moving with the quiet dignity that comes from a job done well. Each elephant's eyes were soft, watchful, and aware that their actions had tipped the balance between life and death. The young calf, though trembling, raised his head and squeaked faintly at the elephants, a sound that seemed both like thanks and wonder. His mother nudged him gently, reinforcing the lesson, even in the wildest storms. Trust and courage could create safety. The sky began to clear as the storm clouds parted, sunlight filtering down in soft beams that danced across the water. The river, though still flowing with power, had lost its immediate threat. Dust and moisture rose from the ground, sparkling in the golden light, giving the savannah a painterly glow. The two species, the rhinos and the elephants, stood together, an unspoken alliance forged through the ordeal. The mother rhino lifted her head, trunk swaying gently, as if acknowledging that life, fragile and fleeting, was preserved not just by instinct, but by choice. The calf stumbled forward, testing his legs, and then pressed against his mother again, relieved by her reassuring weight. Nandari watched, calm and composed, her eyes reflecting the depth of the savannah itself, knowing and full of unspoken truths. She lowered her trunk one last time, as if to bless the small victory that had just occurred. The younger elephants fanned out slightly, creating a protective perimeter, ensuring that the rhinos could begin moving again without fear. Nature had been violent, sudden, and merciless. Yet it had also been kind. It's guided by the instinct to protect and the courage to act when life demanded it. The mother rhino took a deep breath, chest rising and falling with visible relief. She looked down at her calf, then glanced at the elephants, recognizing them not as strangers, but as companions in survival. The calf shook off the remnants of water and mud, his small body bright in the warm light, and pressed once more to his mother's side. The elephants began moving slowly back toward the baobab, trunks swinging and ears flapping softly, leaving the river behind, but staying close enough to intervene again if needed. As the sun rose fully, casting a golden glow across the savannah, a sense of peace settled over the scene. The water glimmered, the grasses swayed, and the distant calls of birds resumed their rhythm. The ordeal had passed, leaving a quiet understanding between species that compassion could exist even in a world governed by survival. The calf, the mother, and the elephants shared a brief, sacred silence, a moment where the chaos of nature was held at bay by courage, instinct, and trust. The savannah stretched endlessly, full of life, danger, and opportunity. And in that vast, wild space, a simple truth endured. Even in the harshest conditions, kindness could bloom, unexpected and powerful, leaving its mark on every heart it touched.